Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marcelo Linguita. I work for the Global Compact Brazil Network, and we're going to start our Amazon session. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. This session is going, despite the participants and speakers are from Brazil, we're going to proceed with this meeting in English because of the audience. So, good afternoon, everybody, again. Good afternoon, Tanya. Good afternoon, Joaquin. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. So let's start right now with some comments on this session. Well, in July 2020, the first month of the Amazon dry season, fires were up nearly 30% over last year. The 6,800 fires reported by the government satellite agency were the second highest in 15 years. They came after June fires hit a 30-year high. This happens a year later of the most iconic event took place in São Paulo, one of the largest cities in the world, about 3,000 kilometers from the Amazon area. Saw the day turn into light due to the wildfires. This September, last month of the dry season, these events are even worse. In the first 14 days of this month, the Amazon had more fires than in all September of last year. Until then, over 5,000 fire spots have been registered in the biome. In addition to the fires, the Amazon is suffering from severe deforestation, which grew 34% from August 2019 to July 2020, compared to the same previous period. The wildfires and illegal deforestation in the world's largest tropical forest is critical not only due to the impact in the GHG emissions and the climate change, but also to the negative impacts for the biodiversity, water cycle, and the preclusion of the local communities to develop sustainability. There is a worldwide movement charging for sustainable operations, including the participation of large investment funds and large corporations. Not only from Brazil, but from other countries as well. Due to the great importance of the Amazon to Brazil, business initiatives are working towards a sustainable development in the region. To discuss these issues, we have the pleasure to present Tânia Cosentino, CEO of Microsoft in Brazil, and Joaquim Levy, former Brazilian Minister of Economy. And I'll ask them when they come to speak to present themselves. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to start with Tânia. Tânia, Microsoft is one of the 70 signatory companies of the statement from the Brazilian business sector. The document stands for the combat to illegal deforestation in the Amazon and for stimulus packages for economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic effects upon a circular, low-carbon economy. Could you please tell us a little bit about the initiative and how companies can support the sustainable development of the Amazon area?
Okay, Marcelo. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here and to share this panel with Joaquim Levy. And first of all, I'd like to thank Global Compact Brazil and SEBEDS, which is the arm of World Business Council for Sustainable Development, for invite me to take part in this panel. I'm Tânia Cosentino. I'm president of Microsoft Brazil. I'm an electrical engineer working in the electrical sector for more than 30 years, and the last 2 years in the tech sector. I'm very engaged with sustainability and especially Amazon since 2009. So I'm not an expert in this sense, but I was working in projects related to energy, access to energy, that is still a pain in Amazon, in the Amazon forest, and also energy efficiency and how to bring through energy economical development to Amazonas. With the projects that I have put in place, not only in the Brazilian Amazon, but also in Colombian and Ecuadorian Amazon, I was awarded by Global Compact in 2017 as a pioneer a SDG pioneer. So I really believe that the business sector have a role to play when it comes to sustainability. And when we put the SDGs and we connect them to our core business, everything becomes easier, and then we are able as private companies to do good to the planet and to the society through the core business. This is what I believe. So the thing today, so we are talking about the urgent topic is Amazon forest, and the clock is running globally, because since COP15 in Paris, and I was there talking about energy at that time, the challenge to fight against climate change, it was enormous, but very few progress have been made since then. Zooming to Brazil and come back to COP15, we made 3 big commitments: improve our energy metrics, have 10% of energy efficiency, promote 10% of energy efficiency, and fight against deforestation, fight against illegal deforestation, and reduce legal deforestation. Today we have a lot of discussions about our energy metrics. That is beautiful. We have 80% of our of energy that we produce here comes through renewables, and this is good. We have a blessed country, so it's a privilege to have the intensity of sun and wind, and also the water that we have in our countries that allow us to do that. But this don't give us a license to deteriorate this metric. So I think it's our duty to keep improving that. And doing that, we are generating jobs, we are generating wealth, and we are also protecting the environment. Around the energy efficiency, also very few progress have been made. Still great opportunities everywhere in the industrial sector, the building sector, an area to tackle to reduce the CO2 footprint. And the third piece, the deforestation, since the COP15, we could see a degradation of our numbers. So what is happening today, considering the latest announcements that Marcelo mentioned, some announcements about deforestation in the recent months and since last year, we could see that those impacts are going beyond the environmental impact. This is clearly deteriorating our image outside Brazil, and this is affecting our capacity to attract investments, is affecting the credibility of the country. So we are particularly concerned about the impact in the Amazon biome, but we also are concerned about how this can impact our growth as a country, our economic growth, and how can this impact the image and credibility of our country. So with all this scenario, the private sector decided to act, and under the umbrella of CBES, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development in Brazil, we decided to create the Brazilian Business Statement. This is an open document. We started with 42 companies and organizations. Today we have more than 72 signatures, and it's growing, what makes me happy. And we aim to show that sustainability, business imperative, producing and preserving are not antagonistic. So this group of companies, we are putting ourselves available to the Amazon Council and to the federal government to contribute with solutions. I think we have a lot of people to criticize what we need to do, because again, the clock is running. We need to come with pragmatic actions based on science, databases, and tech here can play an important role, and collectively help the government to fight or to find the solutions for the challenges we are facing related to sustainability. So it's good to see this coalition, and the topic becomes even more urgent after COVID. One good thing that we are experiencing in Brazil is to see companies reunited around a common goal, and Global Compact in Brazil is leading several initiatives, including initiatives related to COVID-19. So what this document that those 72 companies signed, what this document is about? We want a flexible and comprehensive fight against illegal deforestation. First, start with the legal, and then let's reduce the legal deforestation. And we have some numbers showing that the forest, the deforestation, the cost for that is around 1,000 reais, from 800 could reach until 2,000, the benefit to put the forest in the floor, but the benefits to have the forest stand is 5 times bigger than that. So there is an economic equation that is positive if you preserve the forest. We also want to promote social and economic inclusion of local communities. And this will help us to preserve the forest. When you go to Amazon and you see the reality of the riverside population, we really need to act and bring to them education, health, and economical development. And if you do so, they will be the guardians of the forests. We want to minimize the environmental impact of the use of natural resources. We have to seek for efficiency, productivity, and invest in R&D to have a clear usage or leverage of our natural assets, or our what we call bioeconomy. We want to value and preserve biodiversity. We are also proposing the creation of mechanisms for carbon credit, carbon trading. And we are proposing financing and packages for after COVID, recovery package related and conditioned to a circular and low carbon economy. I strongly believe that low carbon economy is one of the biggest business opportunities of our era, and Brazil, with all natural resources we have, we can have a keyhole in their sense. So this group of companies really want to develop a long-term action that will allow our country to move forward in a low-carbon economy. What we believe and what we want is to have the low-carbon economy as a top priority agenda, and we want to have the carbon as the commodity of the future. And Amazon could represent our pre-salt. For the ones who know the deep water exploration of oil, we call it pre-salt. We want to have our Amazon as our pre-salt of carbon. So what we, together, combining our solutions, we want to propose a scalable way, learning from practice that we have in place to accelerate the results, because this is super necessary. We have a unique opportunity, resources and knowledge, to scale those good practices. So what we want is to think strategically and to act tactically. We want to really, not only we really need to make the right choices, and this will allow us to attract the right investments for Brazil, and will help us to accelerate the economic rebound, the economic recovery after this pandemic. So this is what we want. Private sector, the challenge is too big, that we really need to combine private sector, public sector, academia, NGOs. And in the private sector, we have to go beyond. Each company also have, as I said in the beginning, we have to incorporate the SDGs in our core business. And we need to have our own commitments in terms of CO2 reduction, in our carbon footprint reduction. We at Microsoft used to say that advancement of technology reinforce the opportunity and responsibility that we have to secure that our technology will always benefit any people from the planet, including the own planet. We cannot wait. The planet cannot wait. So we need to act now. And with this in mind, we took bold commitments to reduce our own GHG emissions, aiming to be net zero by 2030 and bring to negativize our historical CO2 emissions by 2050. We also committed to zero waste by 2030, and we are investing in circular economy centers, in recycle centers, to recycle electronic garbage, because with all technology, a lot of electronic will pollute our planet. So we are putting technology, we are investing in technology to build recycle centers. We are investing in startups that are working with carbon removal from atmosphere. We are investing in startups that are also working circular economy and water preservation. So our commitment to the planet comprehends carbon, water, and waste. And now we are starting to work in the different biomes as well. We are investing in R&D and partnerships to create solutions to preserve different biomes. In Brazil, I have some projects in place with Atlantic Forest to identify the quality of the rivers, and we are now discussing several projects to support Amazons. Again, the challenge in Amazonia is huge. We cannot underestimate it. It's not easy to tackle, but I believe that through technology, we can monitor the forest. So how to treat, that goes to our first goal, how to reduce the illegal deforestation. We can monitor the forests. We can help to predict the future deforestation. We can provide real-time information to help governments to act, to fight against current deforestation. We are also discussing the regularization of rural properties in protected and non-protected areas. We can also, through technology, through images, we can also help to have to certify those lands, those properties. One impact that Brazil is suffering today with all these questions about the illegal deforestation is about our exports. We are suffering with our external customers questioning the production and the supply chain of our products. But through technology, we can track the supply chain in our agribusiness, end-to-end tracking, we could say, from farm to fork, and certify our production, ensuring the buyers that we are preserving the areas that we are supposed to preserve, but also giving better and easier access to credit, to investments for the companies that are doing the right thing. Another important topic is to bring solutions to riverside population. As I mentioned, I have been in the middle of Amazon forest more than once. I was there this March before this pandemic, and I was there discussing how could we bring health, education, economical and sustainable development for this population. People there still do not have access to energy. Can you imagine, to internet? They don't have access to water while they are living closer to the river. So if we're not able to offer them decent lives, how can we ask them to help us to fight and defend the forest? So I just see this as a great area of opportunity. We are rich in terms of bios assets, and we can develop an economy around that. So with all those things, I can be optimistic, because we do have the willingness to do the right thing. We have the technology to help us. We have knowledge. We have the assets, but we cannot be just optimistic and wait. We really need to act. And we decided collectively, the private sector decided collectively to propose those actions, to incorporate technology, to help the government to tackle this important challenge and to help our Brazil to come back to the sustainable growth and lead the journey toward a low carbon economy. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Tanya, for the nice explanation about how technology-oriented actions, in addition to knowledge, assets that we have, and the need for a political will, can really support to change the reality of the Amazon area. I think it's important to mention that we're talking in this session about the Amazon area, but this doesn't mean that only the Amazon area or the Amazon biome is under risk here in Brazil. We should not forget about Cerrado, which is the main savanna area in South America that is under great pressure in this, like the recharge of water for most of the for the most important sources of water here in Brazil. But anyway, Tanya, thank you for your nice ideas, for your nice perspective on how the businesses can operate together with other stakeholders to develop the area and to protect the region. Thank you very much. So after these nice considerations, I'd like to invite Joaquim Levy, as I said, former Minister of Brazil. He will present himself. Joaquim, also in July, the letter Convergence for Brazil was published. It unifies contributions from former finance ministers and the president of the Central Bank of Brazil for a common goal, a sustainable rebuild of the Brazilian economy after COVID-19, with social and environmental responsibility. This is an enormous challenge for Brazil. What are the principles to decarbonize the Brazilian economy and simultaneously boost its productivity? Levy, please.
Yes, hello. It's a pleasure to be talking to you in such an important week, and the opportunity of share our views about Brazil is quite unique. As you mentioned, Marcelo, the challenges are big. COVID had a tremendous toll in our population. I mean, literally dozen thousands of people, now 130,000 people have died. I think many of us know sometimes more than one people who have died. And thanks God we have all these heroes in the health system in Brazil. Brazil has a strong health system, both private and public. It's far from perfect, but we had wonderful people there. And even if sometimes there was a little bit of confusion from the political side, the fact is that they have really acted like heroes, devoting their time, putting their health at risk to protect our families. And so when you look forward, we have a clear sense that, of course, Brazil has challenges, but then has also a lot of things in our favor. And you have to focus also on these things, be very much aware of the challenges, but to see where are our comparative advantages, where you can mobilize to really grow, to bring new opportunities for people, to create jobs, to attract investment. And the idea of this group of former ministers and the former presidents of the central bank was exactly to highlight these and try to focus on some lines of work that we should consider. Of course, we do understand that deforestation brings no value. It doesn't add to GDP. Even when we might have, say, livestock, the productivity is extremely low. And because whenever you have deforestation that is legal or fires or things that are not legal, you're just hurting those who are under law. So it lowers even more the productivity of our economy. So that cannot be the way to grow. Rather, you have to use all the natural resources, all the technology, the talents that we have to grow. And of course, also, we have learned the last 20, 25 years that being a democratic society, the importance of the transparency and having data and having information so that the decisions can be taken not only on a scientific basis, let's put that way, rational basis, but also understood by the population and reflecting their rights, their goals, and everything that really makes a democratic society. Now, just to help this discussion, I prepare a few slides that I'd like to share with you that will show why we believe that you can build a better economy, being green, being really sustainable, and using our resources. Now, can you see the slide? Marcelo, can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, wonderful. So let me move quickly. First, when you think about the post-COVID world, yes, we want social and climate responsibility. They go hand in hand. We know, and I'm going to show you a slide that shows that actually Brazil is maybe not the main contributor to climate change, but to certainly be one of the main victims of it. Because all the countries near the equator actually are going to suffer much more than the other countries. So we have to be aware and we have to fight against climate change because this would affect us drastically. Now, the way to grow ultimately is to increase the productivity of our economy. And then, of course, to distribute the gains of this improved productivity. You need to distribute because in a balanced growth, you need to have demand. So you want people to produce more and be rewarded by that, also because they, of course, want to have the incentive to work hard, but also because ultimately we all economists know that not only for, say, ethical or humanitarian reasons, but for economic reasons, you better distribute that so that you have a market, a vibrant market. And that's what you want in Brazil. Now we're living in a very special time, now even in Brazil, where you have low interest rates that could help you to have more investment, to grow, to increase this productivity. For this, of course, you need to organize ourselves, especially in infrastructure. I mean, you need the support of the government because you need an environment that is conducive. People, when they invest in infrastructure, they put a lot at risk. So they need to have some assurance that rules are not going to change and that they are going to get their fair share of the returns because they have put the money. And the same with the populations which are affected by this infrastructure. So that's what we need to take advantage of the low interest rates. And we have to use our comparative advantage. Among them, we could say the renewable energy source. There's so many in Brazil. The fact that we're expanding the services, we have more people. I mean, we just heard from Mrs. Constantino the role of a high tech and how this can transform societies. And then one very good thing about Brazil, we do have very few legacy industries that would make the transition to low carbon footprint more expensive. Actually, we can move without a lot of transition costs. And this is actually shown by a quite specific thing of Brazil. When you think about fossil fuel emissions, actually Brazil emits very little on many metrics. Here I take two metrics. One is the emissions of CO2 by GDP, and the other is the emissions of CO2 by population. Now, of course, if you do emissions by population per capita, we're much below most of countries, especially developed countries, where, of course, because they have high levels of standard of living, they emit much more. But we also have low emissions by GDP because our energy comes from clean sources. So if you compare with our peers in emerging markets, India, China, and so on, we also emit much less from fossil fuels because we do have alternatives. Unfortunately, we do emit a lot because of deforestation. So you see, if you look at the emissions of Brazil, we are not even among the 10th largest emitters from CO2. But we do have a lot of emissions because of deforestation and other. You'll see how different is the share, the contribution of different sectors to our emissions in compared with the rest of the world. Now, when Mrs. Constantino has already talked a lot about I'm sorry, my battery is running down. I may have to stop one moment. We see here that in our industrial part, we do have a lot of emissions also that we could save by adopting new technologies. As I mentioned before, the map at the right would show you that if the 2 degrees world happen, actually in a lot of areas in Brazil, we're going to have 4 degrees or more of increase in temperature, which means it could change dramatically the rain schedule and so on, and affect some of our main resources, including hydropower. Now, like I mentioned before, we have a much larger contribution of renewable energy in our matrix than most of our other countries. You see here at the top, more than around 40% of our energy is totally clean, and then if you include natural gas, you get to 50%. So the big question is how it could reduce the proportion of oil and of coal in our production. Most of our coal is actually imported, it goes to steel making, and we have ways to reduce that. Most of our electricity is clean. We just have a tiny part from natural gas, the rest is hydropower. It has to do with biofuels, biomass basically, and also solar and wind. Now, talking about biofuels, I think it's important to say that we have now a very large share of our cars running on ethanol, but this uses a very small part of our land, uses about 4% of our territory. And we could actually increase drastically the production of ethanol, first because the production of sugar is declining, so more of the sugar cane could be dedicated to ethanol, and also the productivity of sugar cane is increasing and can increase quite dramatically. We are now also using about 20% of our production of the soybean to produce biodiesel. And we can increase this share, and especially we can have palm oil in the forested areas, in the anthropoids, in areas that we have had already the deforestation at least 30 or 40 years ago. This can, one example of where you can get this is in the East Amazon. And there we can have very competitive production of this. It could be used for biodiesel like Indonesia, but also for biokerosene, and this would respond to a major challenge of the air industry. Now, when you move beyond the biofuel and biomass, and here I didn't even mention the contribution of other sources of biomass like planted forests that we'll discuss later. But when you think about the electricity sector, I think that one of the great advantages of Brazil is that you have a single market. It's very different from the United States, where it's very difficult to transfer energy from one place to another. So we can produce energy in the most competitive areas and then distribute it over the whole country. And we have a lot of scope, given the new technologies, in increasing this proportion of electricity that is clean. It's mostly from wind and from solar. Solar is still very small. Wind is already quite significant, about 10% and sometimes more of total energy already comes from wind and continues to grow. Solar is growing fast, but it's still small. What is the big advantage of Brazil? It's because it's a large country, so the production of the different sources of sustainable energy, they are correlated. So when wind is strong, is exactly during the dry season when you don't have that much water. When we have more water, we have to have less sunshine. And because we have a single market, we can integrate all these sources and you can price them in a very efficient way. And as we develop smart grids and so on, this can be more and more efficient and can respond to our needs. Here, there are a number of information about solar. It suffices to say that the potential of solar will be enough to replace all the electricity that you have in Brazil. And I'm not even talking about wind, offshore wind would give even more. Here we see most of this is in Northeast, although in most of our coast we get it. And the wind power in Brazil is much more efficient than, say, in Europe. We have capacity factors between 40 and 50%. Same thing about solar. We are not as good as some places like Chile, but you have plenty of land. You have thousands of square kilometers. We have millions of hectares that could be dedicated to that in places where we don't have that much vegetation or even animal life. And today, the cost of solar is already lower than alternatives, including natural gas. It does mean that we cannot use natural gas. Brazil has a lot of reserves in natural gas. One very interesting way to use this, and most of our natural gas is offshore, it's really to produce the electricity offshore. It's the so-called gas-to-wire production. And the advantage of doing that is that you can re-inject all the CO2 that is produced into the wells. And by reintroducing the gas in the wells, actually we improve the extraction of oil. You probably all know that we have this very large province of oil in the ocean. So we can have this carbon sequestration, the miracle, I could call it, of gas that can produce electricity without emissions of CO2. So this is something that the technology already exists, and actually with the increased wind power, offshore wind power in Europe, this technology is getting cheaper and cheaper. So that is a very interesting alternative in Brazil. And again, we can integrate this with the other sources of energy and have it in a way where all the services and attributes of each of these sources are priced, so you get efficiency. Now, just thinking ahead, and we're talking about investment. You want new jobs, you want new activities. I think that in Brazil, the scope of using electric trucks is quite significant. We don't have that many rails in Brazil. Rail is something quite expensive to build. We are building some of them, but you could have this combination of so-called platoons, which is a number of trucks that can be even driven automatically. And when you have a sequence of trucks, actually the air resistance declines, and you can feed them with electricity. For the main roads, this actually is an effective way of getting our transportation out of diesel and out of other fossil fuels. The same way we could have, for instance, in the case of iron and the steel production, a combination of producing pig iron using charcoal from planted trees. Nowadays, we already produce millions of tons of iron every year using this technology. The same way you also have electric furnaces, which can use this.
Well, perdemos. We're missing Joaquim. Let's wait for him to come back. But before that, or while he's missing, and before he comes back again, I'd like to mention that in a couple of minutes, Global Compact Brazil Network is going to present the 10 principles for possible Amazon. So it's a very interesting document that aims to try to create or to motivate the development of scenarios for sustainable development for the region. So I really invite you to be part of this launch. I'm going to mention very quickly about initiative that banks have developed here in Brazil, and after that I will open to questions. So please, if you'd like to ask Tanya about her speech, or to Joaquin if he comes back, please feel free to do so. In July, three major Brazilian banks, Itaú, Bradesco, and Santander, launched a plan promoting sustainable development in Amazon. This is an unprecedented moment for Brazil. The proposal includes 10 measures on environmental conservation and development of the bioeconomy, investments in sustainable infrastructure, and guarantee of the basic rights for the population of the Amazon region. Now, the three banks are working on the detailing of the measures and setting the targets. To this end, a council of experts was set up with different experiences and knowledge on social and environmental issues in the region to support the initiative and to make it richer. Another initiative in favor of Amazônia is a broad alliance for that has been formed between owners and executives of large companies and banks, researchers, military, economists, politicians, and environmentalists. The initiative called The initiative Concertação for Amazônia already brings together more than 100 names interested in understanding the region, discussing how to develop its potential without cutting down the forest and improving the population's quality of life. The intention is to build bridges with the rest of the country. So these are some of the initiatives that we have here in Brazil related to the preservation of Amazon. And well, Joaquin is here with us again. Joaquin would like to, well, we have the technical problem. Would like to add something to your speech, some comments? Have you finished?
Okay, just comment two things. I don't know. Go ahead. I try to fix whatever is happening.
Okay, right. So let's move on. So we'd like to, the audience would like to make questions for Tanya. Please write down here.
Marcelo, while we wait for the questions, it's interesting to mention that the statement of the business signed by those 72 companies is very aligned to the 10 business principle for sustainable Amazon that Global Compact Brazil has designed. And also there is a big convergence to the letter that Itaú, Bradesco, and Santander, those three banks, also put in place for the government. So it's good to see that we have an alignment when we think about the possible solutions and when we think the possible future for Amazonia. There is a convergence on the proposals, and it's good that we work together.
Great. One point I'd like to mention here is that the initiatives that were explored in the sessions are initiatives including a lot of stakeholders, meaning that the initiatives are not managed by executives or people in the cities of São Paulo or Rio that are really far from the Amazon area and don't know the reality of what's happening locally. It means that the initiatives, all of them, bring together different stakeholders, including those who live in the area and those who face the problems and the challenges every day. So this is important because sometimes Brazilian organizations, particularly business organizations, were faced with this question. Oh, you are far from the Amazon area. You don't know what happens there. So all the initiatives, I like to stress that, are made by different stakeholders. So this is very important for us here in the country. Questions? I don't see questions here. And
with your comment, also is important that we have the private sector, but we are talking about coalitions. We're inviting academy and NGOs, because then we can have the ones owner of technology in one hand, but the others that are living and facing the day-to-day challenges of those distant communities. So we can have the best of a shared knowledge if you have this broad audience to work with. So private sector, public sector, NGOs, local NGOs, academia, then we can enrich the discussions and find the most suitable solutions for the problems.
Thank you, Tanya, for a comment. I got here a message that probably Joaquin ran out of battery, so he'll probably not come back to our session. And well, I don't see questions here, but I'm going to write down my email here. And if you'd like to send us questions, both to Tanya and to Joaquin, we'll be happy to send them your questions. So I will just write down here. So we have my mail. I'll be pleased to gather questions and send them. Okay, right. So if we do not have questions, I'd like to thank you very much.
There is a question for me.
Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. Yes.
So there is a question about what is the motivation for Microsoft to join the Business Ambition campaign, and if internet, how it's connected to business statement. The motivation for Microsoft to join those groups is that it starts with our mission. Our mission is to empower people in every person and organization of the planet to achieve more. So we are talking about how to democratize the society and to reach, if you go to the beginning of the Joaquin Levy pitch, saying, what are the ways out of this crisis, the COVID crisis? We need to get productivity. We need to accelerate the economic growth. We need to attract, we need to improve our comparative advantages. And we can do this through technology. So how can I make the technology available for any person? Doesn't matter if I'm talking about a data scientist or a person from in the middle of the forest. So we have this in mind, live our mission every day. We also believe that artificial intelligence can reshape the world, and it will generate a lot of new jobs. This is the Industry 4.0 event, the digital transformation, but the artificial intelligence will reshape the workforce, will reshape the economies, and it can address most of the challenges. When you go to the Sustainable Development Goals, most of them can be addressed by the usage of technology. So our responsible, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, our responsible increase it considering the impact we can have. So we decided two things. One, first, is to walk the talk. So I have to embrace bold ambitions and tackle my own footprint before going outside and help the market, help the customers, the partners, and governments. We took our bold ambitions around waste, water, carbon, and ecosystem. Then we start to do partnerships, because this is the ODS 17. So we believe, SDG 17, we believe in partnerships. Only one company, doesn't matter if it's the biggest company of the world or the biggest government, we cannot answer to those challenges alone. So we start to build coalitions outside, and this is the campaign that Elisa is talking about. And locally in Brazil, more and more, and I'm very happy to see that, groups of executives are looking, realize that we must have a voice, not only to criticize, not only to point fingers, we must have a voice to try to bring solutions. And then I was incentivized by the company. I have the support of the company to join the movement in Brazil and work with other companies to bring solutions. So now we're discussing with the banks, how can we help with technology? We are discussing in this group with SEBED, how can we help with technology? So it is, again, totally linked to our mission.
Thank you, Tanya. We have another question here. Tanya, do you see the possibility of empowering women to lead an important part of projects in the Amazon area? We know that women really carry out community projects in addition to being the majority when it comes to entrepreneurship. So we also address the equity SDGs. Tanya?
Absolutely. I'm board member of FAS, is a foundation, Amazonas Sustainable Foundation. And we have the Bolsa Floresta. Bolsa Floresta is the aid for forests, is a kind of Bolsa Familia, but dedicated to riverside people. And we give the Bolsa Floresta for the women. They are the ones who are leading the communities. When we have the projects, we create those projects of, in the past, I was doing access to energy. Now I'm doing technical qualification in the IT sector. We always have a lens around women. First, because we are 50% of population. And if you tackle this piece, for sure we will generate economical growth. And when it goes to remote areas, women are the ones that are carrying the burden. Sometimes men, they go out of the countryside or the riverside and go to the big cities to make money. And most of the times they don't come back. And women end up alone. So I saw this in several projects that I was working in Amazonia, outside Brazil, in Bahia. I saw a lot of this. So I really believe that empowering women, we do create a kind of motion that will enable the economical growth. And then when you see Brazil, you have to go beyond women, because when you see the minorities inside the workplace in the majority of population, so the demographic that we have in the population doesn't fit the demographics we have inside the companies. So a lot of things to be done in this sense. But what we also want to do, and a plan that made me travel to Amazon in March, is how to bring education to the middle of the forest. And technical education is very aligned to what Carlos Nobre is saying about Amazonia 4.0, that we need to develop the local economy, leverage the assets, the bio assets we have there. But for doing that, we need knowledge. So we need to bring knowledge to the middle of the forest to enable the riverside population to develop economical growth based on the assets they have in that region.
Right. So we have a last question here, Tanya. Maybe let's see if you can answer to that from Gustavo. What should you as business sector do to unlock the carbon pricing potential and really generate an effective and profitable transformation?
Yeah, the carbon price is object of the debate today. Is one of the statement of business is one of the topics that we want to work. We want to create a carbon pricing mechanism. So we don't believe in taxation, because Brazil today, it's a country of the tax. So 40% of GDP goes through tax. So we paid a lot of tax, and are struggling today to see the benefits, but we are discussing different mechanisms to define carbon pricing, and this is important. But in the meantime, so this is articulation that we are doing with government, so we need to also to motivate discussions with the Congress to help us on that. And in the meantime, we as a company can adopt carbon pricing to price our own projects. And we are doing this in Microsoft for a while. Every single project, we see the impact in carbon and we're pricing them up. And this will make the ROI of the not sustainable project worse than the ones that are more sustainable. This is what we call how to incorporate the externalities and made the negative cost of negative impact become jeopardize our ROI.
Right. Well, perfect, Tanya. Thank you very much for your explanations, for answering the questions. Thank you also for Joaquim Levy for being with us during this afternoon. Unfortunately, he was not able to finish the session with us, but, well, thank him anyway. Well, thank you, everybody, for being with us, and we'll be finishing our session right now. Thank you, everybody. So you have my mail. If you'd like to send Joaquim or Tanya other questions, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon and enjoy the meeting. Bye.
Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you all. It was a pleasure to be